This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
In July 1848, at the Seneca Falls Convention, Elizabeth Cady Stanton began her life's work as a public agitator for the rights of women. What Stanton was and would become had its roots in her childhood. She grew up in a world where wealth was based on land, where people recognized their places in an orderly, communal world, and where her neighbors continued to value citizens who placed the good of the whole group above their own personal gain. Such a community was predominantly hierarchical, but people balanced their strong sense of hierarchy with a corresponding sense of mutual responsibility. In 1815, the year Stanton was born, the northeastern U.S. country stood poised between two ways of life. Fading into the past was a world dominated by slow communications, by local allegiances, and most of all by the land. More than 90% of Americans were farmers. Looming ahead lay a period of change so rapid that even historians, normally the most cautious of observers, would label this a time of revolutions in transportation, industry, city growth, family life, and personal values. Transportation, restricted in 1815 primarily to country roads, turnpikes, and sailing ships, would be revolutionized. First by the construction of canals and then by the application of steam power on both water and land. Manufacturing, still mainly small-scale, local, and organized into a craft apprenticeship system in 1815, would be transformed by new machines, new systems of transportation, new sources of workers, and new markets into a factory-oriented, industrialized economy. Americans, drawn by opportunities for trade and manufacture in new urban areas, would move from farms into cities in what would become proportionally the largest rural-urban migration in the country's history. Moving physically, Americans would also face major challenges in traditional social structures and traditional values. Old systems of order based on hierarchy and deference would crack. People would salvage what they could of old ideas, and they would weave them into safety nets to bridge the chasm between the old order and an often threatening new world. At the time of her birth, Elizabeth Cady's family reaffirmed its commitment to values that were even then growing out of fashion. As society changed dramatically in almost every way, the Cady family did not. In a time of industrialization, they continued to invest in farmland. In a time of urbanization, they stayed in the country. As others began to have fewer children, Elizabeth's parents continued to produce offspring, 10 in all. As ideas of free will began to dominate Protestant religious expression, the Cadys clung to their Calvinist belief in predestination. As voters abandoned the old Federalist Party, Elizabeth's father retained his commitment to it. By almost every measure, the Cady family found itself out of step with the New World. Because of this pronounced conservatism, few would have predicted that Elizabeth Cady would grow up to be a reformer. Stanton herself recognized the irony of it. As a judge, her father was, she remembered, a conservative of the conservatives. Her mother, born into the landed Livingston family, was blue-blooded socially as well as physically. When I became an abolitionist and a woman suffragist, Stanton recalled, I outraged the family traditions.